My name is John Cayless. I was born in Slough in Berkshire in 1955. I lived there till I was 18 years old. My parents moved to Wales for a year and I stayed in Slough. And in 1987, I moved to Lincoln. I've had a steady life, nothing exciting, just got on with things. And my dream is to go to Hawaii. It's one place I've always wanted to visit, but I don't want to do the commercial side of it. I want to go on a holiday and be out in a cabin somewhere out in the forest, away from everything, and just sit and relax. Enjoy Lincoln. It's changed dramatically since 1987, to say the least. There was no university. It's brought a lot to it and in some ways spoiled it. If you look at what used to be out there shop-wise, all that's gone. It's now all accommodation. There's nothing negative against the students. They've got to go somewhere. My first job, I was a trainee import clerk for Meadows Air Freight, working out of Heathrow Airport. Everything that was imported on flights had to go through customs clearance, and that's what we did. It was all aviation related. Aviation was my hobby back then when I was back at school. And so working for somebody at Heathrow Airport was a good idea because it was aviation related. Heathrow was different then. Heathrow Airport, you could go and sit inside Heathrow Airport and watch everything that was going on. But with the terrorism situation, all that got stopped. So the best way of doing it now is to book a hotel that looks out over the airport. And it's quite a lot of people do that. They reserve certain rooms for certain times and just go and sit there and watch the aircraft going in and out and photographing the aircraft in and out. So that's how I got into photography. By gradually, as I got more money in my pocket, being able to afford a camera. When I'd done my O-levels at school, we were given the opportunity to do a work placement, help the teachers in the school I was at, or go to an infant school and help the infant school. And we had about 8 weeks before we broke up. So I said I'd go to an infant school because it was right by where I lived. So I knew a lot of the children that were in that school. And I've been there about 6 weeks. And the teacher asked me to take the class. And about 3 minutes after I started taking the class, the headmistress and 3 other people walked into the room. And she said, just carry on, it's okay, just observing. And they observed for about half an hour, me taking the lesson. Next day, I got called to my school by my headmaster. And 2 of the people that were in the classroom the previous day were with the headmaster. And I thought, oh, what have I done? I'm in trouble here. And at 15 years old, you think the worst. And they said, sit down. And they offered me a teacher's scholarship. Sponsored, all paid for by Berkshire Education Authority. It was the first one they'd offered. I turned it down, went and got a job the next day. And that is possibly one of my regrets. When I think back, I should have done it. It was a stepping stone, but hey ho, I said no. And it was the only person it was offered to out of my school. So that was a bad bit. Good bits. How long ago? No, not really. Being a parent is a good bit. Seeing them grow up into adults, seeing how they perform, how they behave, how they misbehave, what they're good at, what they're bad at. Trying to educate them to do the right thing. That's not always easy. It's a task. Most ridiculous, strange thing I've ever done is to get a catapult launch off the USS Enterprise in the Atlantic. That's the most ridiculous thing I ever did. From 0 to 180 in 3 seconds. It was exciting, but the result of it was weird. And the reason you get strapped in, so your back's right against the chair, you're strapped in. They come round and check the straps are tight. And then the guy sits by the door and he goes like this so that you know the propellers are going and the revs are getting up and you can feel it because you start shaking and all of a sudden it's and you go forward and the straps stretch. And where the seat is about 2 foot in front of you, your head's about 4 inches away from it. And then bonk, you're airborne. And I won't say what I said. I'll never forget it.
Do you feel that there's a divide between your generation and mine?
In some ways, yes. Because a lot of respect has gone. You know, when I was growing up, I couldn't answer my mother back. I couldn't answer my father back. But the reason I couldn't answer my mother back was because she was an ex-policewoman. So if I did, I knew what was going to happen. And true story, a friend of mine, Barry, came round to the house one day and he went like that, gobbing off to my mum. And she said, "Barry, be quiet or you'll be sorry." And she waved a finger at him and he carried on, so she knocked him out. I was brought up to be respectful to everybody. Nowadays, that doesn't happen. With my daughter got bullied at school, and we had quite a lot of people outside the house one night throwing stuff at the windows and whatever, and abuse. So no respect until I went out.
What do you feel is different to when you were younger compared to now? Like, how do you feel?
No electronic toys. We used to play cricket in the street, play football in the street, have picnics in the street, have street fights. And when I say street fights, in the summer we used to have hose pipes and buckets of water. But that's how we used to entertain ourselves. Nowadays, people entertain themselves by sitting indoors going click, 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 on PlayStations, PS, whatever, Xbox.
Do you think it bothers you that obviously our generation are now growing up with all these electronics and major advances that help us in so many other ways? Whereas you had to learn
Yeah, but when you're sat indoors doing nothing, you're a couch potato. Get out and see what's out there. I could give you loads of places to go to that you would probably never think of going. And you'll say, God, I wish I'd been there before. Because it is different and out in the open and seeing what nature and stuff is really about. That's my thoughts, that children and even some adults nowadays don't get out enough.
What do you feel about the future that we have ahead of us?
It's going to be very difficult because climate change is not going to go away. Now, I track some of the storms when they're coming in on the computer, see where they're going, see what they're going to do. And it's scary. Some of the storms they're having in America are crazy. I spoke to a friend of mine over there and he said, "Let me show you the snow overnight." And I said, "Go on then." And he picked the laptop up, took it to the back door and opened the back door, and there wasn't a doorway, it was snow. It was over 6 foot of snow in the night. And he said, "We've never had that before." My views on Brexit, I knew this was going to come, and I have a lovely answer for this. We didn't vote to go in the European Union. Nobody in the UK voted to go in the European Union. What they voted for was to go into the common market. So if we didn't have a vote to go into the European Union, it was the ideal time for me to say, I want out because I never voted to go in. Is that a good enough answer?
What are your views on social media?
Good in some ways and bad in others. I've got a Twitter account and I use it for aviation and photography. I've got Facebook and I use that for aviation and photography. I get so many messages, it's untrue because of the amount of groups I'm in. But it can be good in some ways, but not in others. It can be used to advantage or disadvantage.
Do you think there's a divide between generations on social media?
Yes. Big time. People of my age, a lot of people of my age, don't really know how to use it. And that becomes difficult for them to keep up with life, I think, with what's going on. One of my neighbours, who's no longer with us, came to my door one day and he said, I want to send an email on my iPad, but I don't know how to. And I said, okay. He said, do you know how to use an iPad? And I said, no, I ain't got a clue, but give it back to him 2 minutes later, the email had gone. And he called me all the names under the sun because I'd said I didn't know how to use an iPad, but it was the first time I'd had an iPad in my hands. I just looked at it and figured it out. Social media is such a thing nowadays. People don't know how to use it and they don't know how to see how to use it. If that makes sense. There's no sort of training video where you can go on YouTube, but they don't know how to get on YouTube to watch how to use it. And it's a shame.
We'll probably already go over this, but how do you feel about the current climate issues?
Scary. Because we don't know what we're doing. And that's a fact. Even down to recycling. I can't tell you 100% what's allowed in my bin. Because they come around and say, there's a recycle bin, stick a little sticker on it, and 6 weeks later, there's more allowed in it. 6 weeks after that, there's more allowed in it. But they don't give you the information what's allowed in the bin. It's like electric cars. Sales representatives with electric cars are a waste of time. Or somebody, I could never, if I had an electric van, drive up to Scotland in one hit. I'd have to stop every few hours to recharge, and that's not been thought about properly.
Do you feel that there's more that we could be doing then, or do you think it's just there's no thought being put into it?
Yeah, I think we should be putting more money in research and development. They're just going along with the vehicles they've got and building around the vehicles they've got rather than going for a proper electric vehicle that's going to be sustainable for everybody.
And do you think that your generation needs to take more responsibility, or my generation needs to take more responsibility, or there's just
for climate
change, for no one doing enough?
It's down to you now. We're not going to be here long enough. I hate to say it, but we're not. You've got to educate the children to get it right and let it go through, because you're looking at 30 years, 40 years time, and we're not going to be around being able to do anything in that space of time. So, uni students and kids at school, they need to be educated more right the way through. We can't turn the clock back and go back and say, oh, do this, do that. It's not feasible. It's down to you. My influences are probably looking at other people's photos and thinking, can I do that? And when you get to the stage of thinking, can I do that? You need to try and do that. And if you can do that, all well and good. It's like me. I had that break from photography, and I bought the cameras. I got a pair of these. Bought the cameras, bought the setup, went out, took some photos, and I put them on Facebook, and I put, looks like I've still got it then. This is the first time I've used the camera in how long it was. And one of my friends said, you will never lose it. My dad used to take photographs, but he never really influenced me because it wasn't his thing. Aircraft wasn't his thing. When I'm talking about aircraft, I'm talking from about 12 years of age. My friend John, his house looked out on the flight path for Heathrow, so you could go and sit at his front garden and watch the planes come in and out all day. And that's what we used to do in the summer. We used to all go to John's house. 3 or 4 of us. Saw him a few times after we all left school. But, you lose contact with people, but you don't lose contact with your hobbies. Or at least you shouldn't.
What would you say inspires you most in photography? What pushes you to keep going and doing new things?
Chilling, relaxing, and being able to have an image and go, wow, like that. Getting that image where you think you've done something special. Doesn't matter what other people think, if you think that's special for you, that's what you want.
So what's some some advice that you'd pass down to my generation from yours?
Enjoy life as much as you can. Don't be frightened to try something new. Always be prepared.
So how would you like to be remembered for your photography? And just in life in general?
Life in general, I don't know. As long as I am remembered, that's enough. Yeah, as long as some people remember me. Photography, just enjoy people saying, yeah, that's a really good photo.